It's time to return to our regularly scheduled 0% Growths programming. Hello everyone, my name is Kibi, and you're watching Fire Emblem 8 0% Growths Low Turn Count Playthrough, Chapter 15. Let's get right into it, no need for the world map. Chapter 15 is a bit of an interesting map. It's the desert map of this game. Every Fire Emblem game tends to have at least one desert map, so that's its occurrence in this game, Chapter 15. Desert maps can be quite annoying for a few reasons, but before I go into those reasons, let's talk about Knoll. Knoll is our first magic using unit in a while. He can attack with dark magic, and that's kind of interesting. He's better than our other mages at this point in the game, and he's able to instant promote to kind of make up for his pathetic bases. So his combat is functional, at least for now, at least for this map. He also has a supportive skill that I will go more into in a moment, so that will keep him relevant throughout this part of the game as we approach the end game. So yeah, back to desert maps. Desert maps can be quite annoying, mainly because the desert terrain is able to impede the movement of our various infantry and mounted units. And when your main combat units are infantry and mounted, such as Gerik or Duessel or Seth, that can be quite annoying. However, for one, we do have flyers and mages available that can move through the desert with impunity. So that kind of helps in terms of transporting, especially the flyers. The second thing is that there's not actually that much desert in this map. It's primarily focused in the middle. Meanwhile, the enemies are focused on the various sides of the map, and so we're able to kill the enemies regardless, while basically avoiding the desert. And that's quite important because this is a route map. We do need to get to the enemies and kill them in a quick fashion. So as long as the desert isn't getting in the way of that, we're pretty alright. One unit who's going to help us a lot in that regard is Duessel. The southern part of the map is the main part where enemies are mostly concentrated, and Duessel is ready to obliterate those enemies with his new shiny weapon, Garm. The Black Axe Garm from Grotto is an absolutely wonderful weapon for a few reasons. It's a very strong axe, it has 20 might, that's absolutely ridiculous, but more importantly, it gives a plus 5 speed boost. Every legendary weapon gives a plus 5 boost to a certain stat, but speed is definitely one of the most important stats, and so Garm giving plus 5 speed is very useful in terms of doubling and that sort of thing, and it allows Duessel to double these unpromoted enemies that he otherwise wouldn't be able to face. Duessel is currently our only user of Garm. However, the dream is that one day Gerik will be able to get S axes and use Garm as well. And yeah, you can see that Duessel almost 1-hit KOs these fighters with Garm. It's kind of a shame that we have to waste 2 uses to kill a singular fighter, but as I said, without Garm, Duessel wouldn't even be able to double, so it's worth it in the end. We also got some new units up to the north, and they are moving in the center. They're with Ephraim and Cormag right now. One of them is Eirika. I mean, we know Eirika. She's still bad as always. Really nothing more to that. We also got 2 other units who both have the feature of arriving sooner if you go Eirika route, and they only arrive in this chapter if you go Ephraim route. They are Inez, who is a sniper. Snipers are pretty alright. Inez has really good stats, honestly. He can one-round most unpromoted enemies anyways, and he can one-hit KO those Wyvern Riders with his strong silver bow. That's definitely worth something. But player-face combat at this point in the game is not too useful. It's, you know, Gerik can do most of that, and in general we only need one super good combat unit at this point in the game, so Inez doesn't really see that much use after this chapter. Meanwhile, Saleh's kinda in the same boat. He's the only pre-promoted magic user in the game, so he gets access to staves and good magic, that sort of thing. And yeah, his combat is quite good and serviceable. It works. What's more important though is his staff rank. He's able to use C rank staves right now, and that's pretty nice. He can use barrier and Hummern, that sort of thing. However, that's not enough for this playthrough. We do need to get him to B Staves by near the end of the game, chapter 20 to be more specific. We need him to wield a certain B rank staff that will make him a lot more useful in certain clears. In general, Moulder and Natasha are not enough. We need that third staff user for late game. And he's also better than Moulder and Natasha for various reasons. He has an actual staff rank, or he has a staff range rather, with his 16 magic. And he is also able to actually survive enemy phases, that sort of thing. So yeah, he will end up being a very useful unit. One interesting thing is the rescue drops that we did with Ephraim and Eirika. You saw that we put Inez and Saleh in the desert to rescue drop Eirika forward. And we also had Cormag bring along Ephraim as well. That may seem pretty weird and suspicious, and indeed it is. However, we do need to do it because, whoa, who would have guessed it? Ephraim and Eirika need to be next to each other in order to build a Ephraim-Eirika support. Oh yeah, because the Duessel Ephraim support, it's not enough. It's not enough, ladies and gentlemen. We need Eirika and Ephraim to be together as well. In fact, it's even worse than the Ephraim-Duessel support, because even though the Ephraim-Duessel support is slower, we have more turns and more chapters available with Ephraim and Duessel to be together. Meanwhile, let me tell you guys, the ways that the numbers work out in terms of turns and that sort of thing, Ephraim and Eirika need to be together every single turn possible in order to get the support in time. That includes turn 1 of this map, and so that's why we needed to do those weird rescue jobs and why those two are just chilling in the desert by themselves, kinda doing nothing. The exception to what I just said, by the way, is the final turn of any given map, because supports don't grow on the final turn of maps. Man, I haven't actually been talking about this enemy phase. It's kind of interesting. Cormag has a chance of death. He needs to dodge 2 of 4 wyverns. However, he can 1-hit KO them cleanly with the Dragon Spear, so that ends up being useful. We also had Duessel deals with some wyverns with a strong silver axe. One of them actually survived the silver axe. That kind of shows how strong they are, or how bulky they are anyways. And we're able to clean them up kind of on this player phase, at least some of the enemies. The wyvern riders are still an issue because we can't kill an entire 4 this turn, and the issue with them is that they have a lot of movement, and if we let them go towards units like Tetis or Moulder, those guys are just going to get obliterated. So we need to figure out some type of formation, and the formation that ends up working is this little wall thing with Knoll, Seth, and Dozla, and Joshua just kind of sitting in front of these wyverns, and that manages to protect Tetis well enough, and Moulder, well, he'll do something as well. Meanwhile, we also transported Gerik all the way up. As I said, Duessel and friends can mainly focus on this southern part of the map, and that leaves Gerik available to do other things, namely, effectively solo the top left hand of the map, top left hand side. And he can do that very well. He also really likes doing it because he gets a lot of axe strength that way. He's able to use a Sword Reaver and a Steel Axe. Both of those axes give accelerated axe weapon rank, and so he's able to build his axe rank very quickly. In fact, if you paid attention, he already got B axes at the beginning of this map, and he's actually gonna get A axes at the end of this map. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly. Saleh has to double back in order to deal with the mercenaries. Meanwhile, Moulder the Boulder lives to his name and just tanks Chapter 15 Wyvern Rider's Javelin. That's base Moulder, ladies and gentlemen. I do not even know what to say. Kinda ridiculous, honestly. Shows how Sacred Stones, how kind of easy it is, honestly. But yeah, Saleh has to double back in order to deal with the various enemies as well, where Gerik's doing the top left-hand side, Saleh's mainly going to be doing the top right-hand side. That kind of detracts from his staff usage, by the way. We had to make sure that he used a barrier earlier in the map, because right now he needs to fight some enemies on player phase. Or heal in this case because he's at quite low HP. He also needs to use Hellfire in order to cleanly 2-hit KO that Berserker. Meanwhile, Duessel managed to kill another Berserker with Garm. He needed to use Garm in order to double the Devil Axe Berserker. So that can be... yeah. And we have some Pegasus Knights and various reinforcements coming in. On the bottom side, there are some Cavalier reinforcements that are supposed to spawn, but we actually have Knoll and that enemy Wyvern Knight able to block the forts that spawn the reinforcements. So that's quite useful. I also haven't mentioned the items. Yeah, in desert maps there tend to be hidden items in the sand, and you have to go in certain areas in order to get the items. There are some essential items that we have to get, such as the Swiftsoles earlier, and we're also going to get Warp and other sorts of things. We don't get all the items because there's no real need. We also have 2 bosses in this map, and Valter, oh my goodness, Valter is kind of a ridiculous boss. He doubles everyone, or basically everyone in the army. I think Gerik and Renek are the only guys who don't get doubled. Meanwhile, Kalak just gets obliterated by the Swordslayer. Kalak has the benefit of not being able to get crit, but when you're weak to the Swordslayer and you get doubled by Gerik, that's just kind of unfortunate. He also convoy swap to a hatchet to deal with those 2 range enemies. And we also do the classic warp strategy in order to get the warp over to Moulder and warp Tetis. This isn't strictly needed to save a turn, but it helps a lot because if you notice, Duessel barely 2-hit KOs Valter with Garm, and if we waited until enemy phase to try and finish him, Valter would get fort healing, and then he would survive the second hit. And if we're not wielding Garm with Duessel, then we get doubled and cleanly 3-hit KO'd, so we need to dodge the hit, or 1 attack. That's unreliable, and in general we have 1 warp free in this entire playthrough, so we're a-okay with using Tetis and getting a reliable boss kill against Valter. Like, statistically Valter is a nightmare. He can pierce and he can crit with his S-Lance bonus. It's kind of ridiculous. So we're grateful that we have that warp available to help out. And we are also ready to deal with this enemy phase. That's going to end the map. Saleh has a bit of a hard time. He gets cleanly 3-hit KO'd by any combination of enemies, so he needs to mainly rely on dodging. He's also able to use his Hellfire Tome in order to kill most of these enemies. I thought this would be quite nice because I expected that Saleh would be using Excalibur in this playthrough. In all my other versions of this playthrough, he used Excalibur to a good effect. But funnily enough, we just ended up not needing Excalibur. So in general, throughout the rest of the game, I'm going to be putting a decent amount of effort into Saleh's Anima rank as well, but it ends up not being necessary. So yeah, another nice thing about this map is how Moulder was able to use Warp, and the nice thing about that is that he also got a good chunk of experience that ends up being quite useful. We also got various items such as the Hoplin Guard from Kalak and the Feli Shield from Valter. The Hoplin Guard is more important than the Feli Shield, it turns out. And now Gerik, earlier, also got A axes. That's quite nice. And Gerik just finishes the chapter versus that Pegasus Knight. We rout all the enemies in 4 turns. We get out Holma, which is pretty worthless, and Excalibur, which is totally worthless. And that is chapter 15, completed in 4 turns. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hope you have a nice day.